Hello, my name is Ezra, otherwise known as eSoup. Today we are finishing Volume 7 of QJJ. I still can't believe we are here. I still can't believe this is happening already. But we finished this today, and then next week we have a month of baihe. We have a month of The Beauty's Blade, or Mei Ren Jian. And then we go to Volume 8, the final volume of this book. Like, I can't believe how close we are. I wish we didn't have to, like, interrupt it, but I think we're gonna have fun reading some baihe on this channel. But, I'm also just scared about how this volume is going to end, because the ominousness of the cover is like staring at me, and nothing has like really happened with that yet, but I'm like, you know, there's still time, so it worries me. Good to see everybody here. Henry, you said, please tell me you will wear the blade earrings to the Beauty's Blade streams. I will certainly try. I was just, looking in the mirror, struggling to put these on because they have the most annoying clasping mechanism known to man. And, like, literally, I was like, wait a minute, I have to do my stream. I don't have time for this. So one of them is not even put on right. But I tried. Oh no, YouTube. Bad YouTube. Why would you do that, YouTube? Oh, so today I'm going to experiment with, like, a mid-roll ad. I'm supposed to be able to manually control it, so, like, when the break starts, I'm supposed to say, like, you can play an ad now, and it certainly should, you know, not take up the whole break. So it shouldn't interrupt anything, but I don't really know how this whole thing works, so I'm just like, if anyone gets an ad at the, you know, not during the break, or it does something weird, just, like, let me know. But yeah, and as soon as it does anything weird or interrupts anything, I'm just gonna, like, turn those off again. But I just wanted to try it since you can apparently do it manually. Yes, Cookie, you said Rujue just got licensed too. I saw there were, like, 3 baihe licenses from Seven Seas, right? And they're all by the same author. I don't know, I would be possibly down to read one of those on the channel at this point if we ever get there. It'll be years down the line at this point, but but I'm very excited for that. Henry, you said I have a single dagger earring too. I feel like it's a gay canon event. There is something very gay about the dagger earrings. I don't know why, but it just, there is. I feel like there was something else I was going to say. Oh yeah. So yeah, we're finishing the book today. This will be a bit of a long stream at 59 pages, but I'm fine with that. We're reading chapters 258 to 262. So, deep breaths, and let's see what's in store for us. We are on page 385 for chapter 258, which is called Small Fish. The heir apparent had led all the officials to pray for rain, but rain never fell upon Yongcheng. Jiang Qingshan scoured the countryside trying to raise grain, while Liang Cuishan continued to audit the Chuancheng accounts. Meanwhile, so frightened had the Helian Marquis been by Han Cheng's death that he took to his bed with illness, remaining hidden in his residence. We can't risk giving them the runaround on these accounts. The Helian Marquis sighed with distress as he lay surrounded by cushions. And Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is confined in the inner palace. Heaven wants my clan to perish. Feisha, the young Marquis, had also received quite the scare during the banquet. He, too, dared not casually step out of doors. From his place keeping watch by his father's bedside, he complained, Why did you have to embezzle so much money? All that silver. Making it up would be impossible, even if we wanted to. How can you blame me? Who have I done all this for? The Hylian Marquis was in tears. With difficulty, he propped himself up and pointed at Feisha. Had you not fallen so short of expectations? Would I need to go around begging all those favors? Look at yourself. You're accomplished in neither civil nor martial pursuits. Even if you inherit the title of Marquis, you'll just be idling around waiting for death. If I don't pull what strings I can, what will become of our clan? Why did you have to embezzle so much money? That is a crazy question. Henry, you said, if Meat Bun or Tong Jo Ching ever write a baihe, I will ascend to the heavens. I agree, but I could swear that somebody was telling me that Tong Jo Ching was working on a baihe, and it was like, I want to say sci-fi, but I could be completely wrong. I will find that later and send you the link if I can find it. Yes, you're right. Hearing his father gasping for breath, Feisha hurriedly helped him lie down again. I'm a rascal. I'm stupid. Don't go making yourself faint from anger. Lying there with tears streaming down his face, the Hylian Marquis clutched at his chest and composed himself. If the court comes to seize our estates, I don't even dare to think about it. Commandery Princess Zhao Yue, a mourning white flower tucked in her hair, sat nearby, holding her child in her arms. She had been home since her divorce and had grown frail after hearing of the demise of the Pan clan. She handed the child to the wet nurse and motioned for the servants to leave them alone. If you knew it would come to this, would you have been so? Ah, it's too late for regrets now. Zhao Yue's almond eyes were rimmed red. Those accounts have led to the death of so many people. It's true. There have indeed been deaths, the Hylian Marquis lamented. But without those accounts, how could you have married into the Pan clan? That prestige and honor were all given to you by our clan's wealth. When the Hua clan was at the height of its power, Hua Siqian lorded over the whole realm. We were under his thumb. We had no choice but to throw in our lot with them. After Hua Siqian's death, I hoped Shu'ar could obtain an official post at the very least, and at the very least have a say in the imperial court. But he's always fooling around. I was left with no choice. The Fei clan of Chuancheng had very few male offspring. Feisha was their sole descendant of lawful birth. If the Hylian Marquis didn't plan for their future, they would end up no better than the Shui clan. Yet even the declining Shui clan had produced a Shui Xiuzhuo. In contrast, the Fei clan was completely without talented men. Blue, you said Meat Bun's baihe pen name can be Fish Bun, doesn't eat fish. Yeah, I kind of forgot about the divorce too. But, Blue, I think you're right. It's better for her that she had to get divorced before her husband died if she wanted any semblance of life after. Probably true. Oh, no, like, sorry. I know what you're trying to say. It sucks for her, but it's good. What I took from your comment was, like, it's good that, like, she was able to get divorced, I guess, in this situation. Like, I feel like, because I do feel like if he had died and they had still been married legally, then that would have been worse for her. Remembering this, the Hylian Marquis sat up again. What's the name of that child who used to serve in the embroidered uniform guard? You mean Fei Sheng? Feisha offered. Right, Fei Sheng. It was all because I vouched for him that he could inherit his father's position. And it was also on my account that Han Cheng promoted him. But the little rat fled with Xiao Zhiya, and now he's serving Shen Zichuan in Zhongbo. The color drained from Feisha's face. Those are rebels. Association with him is punishable by death. There's no way we can dig ourselves out of this hole. The Hylian Marquis's voice rose. Not only will we be stripped of our properties and our noble title, our whole clan might be beheaded. Look at the Pan clan. How many of them are left alive? Even if they were banished to the borderlands, they would still conveniently die before they reached their destinations. The longer he spoke, the more disheartened he became. We might as well switch allegiance to Zhongbo. Even Tao Ming of Huaizhou has defected. Interesting. Yeah, like, there might be some people that are considering following Shen Zichuan now because they have no better option. Not that he should necessarily take their, accept them, but I didn't think about that. Fei Shi sat stunned. He'd been born in a nest of gold and silver, and what was more, he was a young marquis, due to inherit his father's title. He had always been a loyal subject of Great Zhou, yet now his father was suggesting throwing in with the traitors and rebels. The very idea was absurd. After sitting in a daze for a while, he said, "No, how can I be a traitor? Qiang Jin never betrayed his country. He died loyal to Great Zhou. He and I were bosom friends. I could never do such an unrighteous thing. Besides, Shen Zichuan is a vicious and ruthless man who holds grudges, while Fei Sheng merely craves fame and power. No, this won't do." What good is loyalty and righteousness in the face of imminent destruction? The Hulian Marquis huffed in irritation. You refused to apply yourself to your studies, but somehow you learned all of Pan Lin's bookish dogmatism. In any case, I'm not leaving, Fei Shi said, bullheaded. At the end of the day, you are a marquis. I don't believe the Grand Secretariat will lay their hands on you. Why wouldn't they? Zhao Yue dabbed at her tears. Without the Empress Dowager to stop it, the heir apparent will investigate and deal with us in strict accordance with the law. Once the memorandum from the Grand Secretariat is issued, seizing our states and chopping off our heads will be no more than a night's work. She thought again of Pan Yi, and covered her face to weep. That was what happened to the Pan clan. Look at your sister. She still has her child to think of. Tears ran down the Hulian Marquis's face. Can you truly bear to see your elderly father executed, your dear sister banished, and set to slave labor, the whole family in mass graves? But we can't just leave, either. Zhao Yue looked up and wiped her tears. Shi-Er is right. When Fei Sheng was in the embroidered uniform guard, he was already a master at currying favor with those in authority. He only thinks of his own gain. There'll be no moving him unless you can offer him sufficient benefits. Father, please hear me out. Yongcheng is suffering a drought, and Jiang Qingshan is in Chudu begging for grain, while Tao Ming has fled. The imperial court is in a predicament. Why not sell off our country estates and use the money to acquire grain for the imperial court? But there is no grain to buy right now, the Hulian Marquis replied. I couldn't purchase any even if I had the money. Father, buy it back from whomever you sold it to. Zhao Yue tucked away her handkerchief. As for Fei Sheng, we'll discuss him again if the need truly arises. Henry, interesting point. You said, I love that Fei Sheng's #1 skill is currying favor, and he keeps failing to curry favor with Sa'an. Sa'an is the one that he can't crack. Yeah. A few days later, the servants of Mingli Hall replaced its ice basins. Li Jianting sat inside reading memorials, while Fuman, bent at the waist, gently fanned her. Your Highness has been reading for 2 hours, Fuman said softly. Please take a break. It's going to be me. Li Jianting closed the memorial. Before she could speak, Fuman turned to call, Bring in the chilled sour prune soup. Not sure how I feel about that. Your Highness, it's so warm today. Please have some to dispel the heat. Fuman had been in Li Jianting's good graces lately. She still seemed angry with Feng Chuan, and kept only Fuman by her side to serve her. Fuman was naturally delighted. In the past, He would never have dared to speak on behalf of the heir apparent, but after several probing overtures, she hadn't reproached him for being presumptuous, so he grew increasingly bold. While Li Jianting wiped her hands, Fu Man tidied the desk for her. Li Jianting watched him arranging the memorials neatly, sorting them by regions and ministries, and asked, "Why have you placed this memorial from Ming Zong with the Grand Secretaries? From what I remember, they are not from the same hometown." "They are teacher and pupil, Your Highness," Fu Man beamed. The Grand Secretary was the one who selected Lord Ming for promotion. Kong Qiu currently held the post of Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat. The number of officials from the various ministries he evaluated during reviews was too numerous to cite. As per custom, all of these officials could address him as teacher. It hadn't been long since Li Jianting had taken over government affairs, so she had indeed been unaware of this connection. There were so many officials in the capital that unless she paid particular attention to them, it was difficult for her to remember each and every one. At present, Fu Man was merely serving before the throne. After the heir's coronation, he could very possibly become the director of writ, who wielded the vermilion ink brush on the emperor's behalf and commented on memorials. But Li Jianting was not the powerless Xiande emperor. She personally managed government affairs. Moreover, she was young and energetic, and did not need eunuchs to handle such essential functions on her behalf. In memorizing all of these political relationships regardless, Fu Man was revealing his own ambition. Understanding dawned on Li Jianting. "You know more than I do." Fu Man was slightly taken aback. Reacting quickly, he protested, "This humble servant doesn't dare interfere in the affairs of the imperial court. The Grand Secretary once mentioned this connection in the office compound when I was serving, and this humble servant remembered it." "It's a good thing." Li Jianting's expression was amiable. "I can never remember these details. I'll be counting on you to remind me in the future." Her words were mild and polite, no different from usual. As he reached over to gather up the soup bowl, Fu Man stole a glance at Li Jianting. He was relieved to find a smile on the heir apparent's face. He added, "It's this humble servant's great fortune to share your highness's worries." "Have the gentlemen arrived?" Li Jianting asked. "If so, let them in." Kong Qiu, Xue Xiuzuo, and the rest gathering outside Mingli Hall entered upon hearing the summons. They kowtowed and greeted her in unison. "These humble subjects pay their respects to your highness." "You are all my teachers." Li Jianting gestured for Fu Man to help Kong Qiu up. "There's no need for the Grand Secretary to be solicitous when entering the hall. It is I who ought to pay my respects to you as a student." Kong Qiu took his seat and smiled. "Your Highness is no longer merely my student. There is no need for the formalities between teacher and pupil. Mingli Hall is a place where affairs of state are handled. Here, there is only a ruler and her ministers. This humble subject dares not overstep." Li Jianting studied Kong Qiu's face and couldn't help smiling. "You bring good news today." Kong Qiu was reticent, experienced, and, above all, prudent. He rarely exhibited such visible joy. Sure enough, his next words were, "Jiang Qingshan reported this morning that all the relief grain for Yongcheng has been assembled." "So soon?" Li Jianting was delighted as well. "Was it borrowed from Hezhou?" It was the Helian Marquis. The elation faded slightly from Kong Qiu's expression. "He knows there are discrepancies in his field tax accounts. In the hope that your highness will be lenient with him, he sold his country estates and purchased the grain of his own accord to help the common folks of Yongcheng." Well, it was really his daughter's accord, but I'm glad he actually listened to her. The details of the Chuancheng field tax case were tacitly understood by all involved. The imperial court wanted to recover the arrears and even resurvey the fertile lands to return them to the commoners. No doubt the Hulian Marquis would have to bear responsibility and receive punishment for this. Now the Grand Secretariat would have to take his contribution into account. Xue Shoujuo spoke up. As they say, one may not bargain with the law. Your Highness must not allow miscreants to think they can get away with misdeeds and bribe their way out. In this humble subject's opinion. Here he knelt before the heir. The Hulian Marquis must be investigated and punished according to the law, even if he has furnished grain for Yongcheng. When all is said and done, Chen Yu argued, we are investigating the field taxes to restore the livelihoods of people in the 8 cities. If the Hulian Marquis is willing to raise grain for the city of Yongcheng, it means he is repentant. Her Highness must also govern with mercy and benevolence. We are talking about punishing the Fei clan by seizing their properties and taking their lives. Adhering too strictly to the law may lose her the favor of the people. Chen Yu was a senior minister, one who hailed from common origins. His attempt to preserve the life of the Hulian Marquis was solely for Li Jianting's sake. The Hulian Marquis had produced grain for disaster relief. No matter what transpired after, he would now have a reputation for generosity in Yongcheng. If Li Jianting insisted on the harshest punishments the law allowed, then she would be showing the remaining noble clans that the only path left for them was to fight her to the bitter end. That makes sense. When they had first begun to investigate the Dancheng accounts, Chen Yu had repeatedly advised Kongqiu to slow down. Now, after Shen Zichuan's resounding victory in Duanzhou, all 6 prefectures were under his command. Once the war in Libei ended, Chudu would undoubtedly be his next target. As the saying went, perseverance yielded success. Enough drops of water could wear down a stone. The noble clans were a deeply rooted malady in the body of the empire. Their downfall could not be rushed. If rashly excising them brought harm to the heart of the nation, how would they have the strength to deal with Zhongbo? Besides, the resurveying of commoners' fields in Dancheng necessarily meant a re-audit of the census register to make sure all lands were properly allocated. If the imperial court wanted to focus on treating this internal rot, they first had to avert the external threat. The court gave the noble clans latitude during the reign of Xiande. Xue Shoujuo protested. Look what happened then. The 8 cities went from bad to worse. These benevolent policies are what led to the reselling of public grain in the first place. If we don't punish one as an example, how can we deter the rest from continuing their crimes? The state is now in imminent peril. Chen Yu knelt too. Li Bei and Zhongbo have revolted one after another, and rebels have assembled in the countryside. Shen Zichuan, it is precisely because the state is in imminent peril that we must strictly enforce the integrity of the court. Xue Shoujuo cut in, kowtowing heavily. If we let the noble clans continue to drain our strength, how can we revitalize the empire? Chen Yu raised his head and said earnestly, the life-saving medicine has already been administered. The Pan, Han, Hua, and Wei clans have collapsed, and the grip of the noble clans on Chudu is not the vise it used to be. If we do not eliminate the threat at our borders now, they will grow to be great catastrophes. Your Highness, governing a large state is like cooking a small fish. Hence the chapter title. You must not disrupt too much, or everything will fall apart. I like that. Li Jianting sat in quiet contemplation. I don't actually know who's more right in this situation, but I want to say that it would be satisfying to see Li Jianting go against what Xue Shoujuo is saying, just so that it's like an example like of her being like, I'm not going to be your puppet. Waves of heat shimmered in the courtyard outside the hall. Inside, The silence was almost eerie. The quiet was only interrupted when a junior eunuch hurried up the steps and made his way under the eaves of the hall to whisper something in Feng Chuan's ear. "Your Highness." The beaded curtain swung wildly as Feng Chuan raced through with the announcement. "Her Majesty, the Empress Dowager, is critically ill." Everyone in the hall turned pale. I guess we'll be getting back to that important decision later. That is the end of the chapter. We are on page 395 for chapter 259, Rumors. When Li Jianting arrived, she saw that the imperial physician attending to the Empress Dowager had prostrated himself on the ground in panic. Aunt Liu Shang was kneeling beside the bed. She grasped the Empress Dowager's hand and called softly, "The heir apparent is here." Blue, you said, the question is she aware that she will not live for long if she's obvious about not being a puppet ruler? You said, because I think yes. I think... Yeah, I think she's aware of how precarious her situation is and how crafty she has to be to somehow be able to, like, do her own thing, but seem like she's not. Like, it's just, like, a crazy balancing act. The Empress Dowager's breathing was labored as she glanced sidelong at Li Jianting. She was sweating profusely, and her bare face was lined with wrinkles, finally betraying her old age. Her voice was feeble. "I want to speak to Her Highness." Aunt Liu Shang rose and retreated with the attendants, giving them privacy. The drapes in the hall were pinned up on both sides. The fragrant scent of incense wafted from the small Buddhist shrine. Wisps of smoke obscured the statue, rendering its compassionate expression indistinct. Li Jianting bent to pick up the string of prayer beads that had fallen to the rug and caught a whiff of rich sandalwood. "Ever since you set up that banquet to kill Han Chung," the Empress Dowager's hair, left loose around her shoulders, shifted as she turned to look at her. "I knew you wouldn't tolerate me, either. Even if I had the heart to do it, I too am powerless." Li Jianting turned the prayer beads in her hand. "Fu Man's hasty action today makes it clear your Majesty has lost the support of all. I fear this is the end of your road." The Empress Dowager's chest heaved, but she forced herself to smile. Her gaze seemed to pass through Li Jianting. "You are indeed the Guangcheng Emperor's daughter. How laughable your Li clan is. Had you been a son..." "Had I been a son, I wouldn't have lived to this day." Grasping the prayer beads tighter, Li Jianting took a seat on the edge of the bed. "You yourself killed all the men of the Li clan." Even with her sweat-damp hair stuck to her cheeks, the Empress Dowager still retained a ghost of her unsurpassed beauty from those bygone years. Her lips quivered. Who would have thought he could be so ruthless? He would rather commit the sin of incest and leave me such a scourge. Mirth brimming in her eyes, she continued, "He was the one who forced Prince Qin to his death. You killed your husband and your sons to get to where you are today. You could have forged a new path as a sovereign never before seen in history. Yet instead you handed power and authority to someone else. You placed your trust in the eunuchs and allowed them to undermine court politics. You favored and helped your eldest brother, Hua Siqian, and bolstered the influence and arrogance of the powerful ministers. Now the state stands on the brink of collapse, and you are to blame." The smile in the Empress Dowager's eyes gradually dimmed. She stared at Li Jianting. "It's lonely at the top. You don't understand. I am a floating weed on the river, with no one to depend on." "A floating weed," Li Jianting repeated. There was no sorrow on her face, nor was there any joy. She looked away, her gaze gliding past the drapes, before settling on the Empress Dowager's dressing table. Fixing her eyes on the polished bronze mirror there, she said, If you were not bold enough to fight the current of precedent and tradition, then why stir up such great waves to grasp at power? You are a woman, too, the Empress Dowager said. How do you not understand me? Ooh, iconic line coming. I am neither a woman nor a man. Li Jianting swung her gaze back to the Empress Dowager, her eyes clear and bright. I am merely Li Jianting. The Empress Dowager was at a loss. After a while, she said, When I see you, I recall how regal an emperor of the Li clan is. But you, too, are under the control of another. This game lies not in any one man's hands, but in all the mountains and rivers of the empire, Li Jianting said softly. Those who think they are directing the board are merely late to the game. The Empress Dowager's breathing grew fainter, and so did her voice. Poor Xue Shoujuo, for all his scheming and plotting. She widened her eyes slightly and murmured, Mountains and rivers. The last rays of the evening sun faded into shadow outside the palace. A scattering of birds sailed across a blue sky. A petal dropped from a peony leaning precariously out of a vase and landed on the dressing table, where a nudge of the wind sent it on its way. You said if the Emperor thing falls through, please write a novel, Jianting. I love you. Yes. Same. Blue, that's interesting. I totally forgot about that flashback. But yeah, no, that kind of checks out. I mean, I would say the way the character of Li Jianting reads to me is that everything about being a woman has been sort of compared to or a source of, like, captivity and control in her life. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, yes, non-binary sovereign. And also, like, I don't know if I, like, completely read it that way, but it's like, yeah, Li Jianting is just a really interesting character, like, regardless. The news from Chidu was urgently dispatched to Qidong. Hooves thundered through the night, and a messenger arrived at the Bianjun commandery only a few days later. Hua Xiangyi had yet to retire for the day. Spotting Qi Wei coming in with the relay report, she asked with a smile, Is my aunt's letter here too? Qi Wei paused at the threshold, his expression odd. Sensing something amiss, Hua Xiangyi slowly got up. Has she fallen ill? Qi Wei looked at his boots to avoid her gaze. My lady, Her Majesty, has passed. Hua Xiangyi stumbled back, and her maidservant Hong Ying rushed forward to support her. She looked dazedly at Qi Wei, tears already flowing down her face. Gripping Hong Ying's arm for support, she took a few steps toward the door and said in a hoarse voice, Don't lie to me. Qi Wei was silent. Hua Xiangyi covered her mouth with her handkerchief as her shoulders began to shake. How could this be? Before Qi Wei could answer, Hong Ying cried, My lady. Hua Xiangyi, already sinking heavily against her, had fainted. The scent of calming incense filled the tent. When Hua Xiangyi awoke, Shi Juyin was sitting in the chair at her bedside, peeling an apple. Why did I know that it was going to be like, oh, Hua Xiangyi faints, and Shi Juyin is there to take care of her? Also, yeah, Blue absolutely would be so cool to have a non-binary character in a Danmei novel. That actually reminds me that I went looking to see if there was, like, a Danmei with, like, a trans man in the couple, or at least, like, one of the couples. And I can't remember, but I think someone brought up that there was, like, one. But it was, like, a side couple. And, like, they didn't, like, those characters didn't, like, feature very much. But I was still like, well, that's something. But, like, I want that to be a thing. Like, I want that to be, like, a main character. Anyway, back to this. Seeing Hua Xiangyi's lashes flutter, she set the knife on a small table and wiped her hands before touching Hua Xiangyi's forehead. You collapsed. You didn't even know you were sick. Hua Xiangyi's lips were pale. She kept her eyes closed, her tears soaking the pillow beneath her cheek. Qi Juyan had never been good at consoling others. At the sight of her weeping, Qi Juyan rushed to dry her tears with the handkerchief. Only when she was done did she belatedly remember this was the same handkerchief she had used a moment ago to wipe her hands. Hua Xiangyi turned away, curled in on herself, and sobbed inconsolably. She cried until she was exhausted, then fell asleep in the same position. When she woke up again, Qi Juyan was still in the chair. News travels slowly, Qi Juyan said. The new emperor will ascend the throne soon. I'll escort you back. Now that Auntie is gone, there is no place in Chudu I want to return to. Hua Xiangyi blinked her swollen eyes. When we parted, she was in good health. It has only been 2 months. How has she passed away from illness? Qi Juyan was silent for a spell. I promised you we'd let her live. The marshal is far away in the Bianjun commandery. Your power is limited, Hua Xiangyi said. The inner palace is not like the imperial court. The dangers there are invisible. Even the Grand Secretary's reach does not extend there. Qi Juyan thought Hua Xiangyi was going to say more, but she stopped and propped herself up. You're busy with military affairs, Marshal. You don't need to stay here. Hua Xiangyi's face was wan. Her pale wrists were soaked in frosty moonlight, and her eyes were downcast. It was true that Qi Juyan couldn't linger here. She felt around her sleeve for a small scented pouch, and set it on Hua Xiangyi's lap. By now, the night was drawing to a close. Hong Ying is waiting at the door. Qi Juyan rose to her feet. I'll be in the side hall. Hong Ying heard Hua Xiangyi's summons at the crack of dawn. The maidservant sent someone to the kitchen to fetch breakfast while she headed inside. Bring my chest over, Hua Xiangyi said. Hong Ying went to the cabinet and retrieved the chest she indicated. Hua Xiangyi unlocked it, then instructed Hong Ying to bring her a copper basin. She lit a fire and began feeding the account books in the chest into it, one by one. My lady, what are you doing? Anxious, Hong Ying moved to stop her. These are all accounts you went to painstaking effort to calculate. The heir apparent promised Marshal Qi she wouldn't kill my aunt. Hua Xiangyi released the last book from her slender fingers, and watched as the fire gradually devoured it. If she didn't do it, then she's incompetent. If she did, then she's untrustworthy. The breeze ruffled the pages, scattering ash over the ground. What's it? Oh, Vase, yeah, I see how you read it that way. Oh, goodness. The night in Duanzhou was cool, and the courtyard was filled with flowers and trees. To dispel the mosquitoes that gathered around the plants, Fei Sheng lit incense under the newly erected pergola. The ice in Chen Zichun's bowl clattered when he stirred it. He watched Xiao Qie teach Xiao Xun how to draw a bow as he listened to Fei Sheng report the news from Chudu. If Xue Shouyi wants that post in charge of the palace depository, he'll have to win over the eunuchs. The eunuchs in the palace are fond of the imported goods from the port of Yongyi. Have Qing prepare something. Qing says he's done so already. When the new emperor ascends the throne, she's bound to grant a general amnesty, and posts in the court may be reshuffled. When the time comes, Xue Xiuyi may get his chance to make a name for himself, Fei Sheng said. With the Empress Dowager's demise, the noble clans are in a precarious position. The Hulian Marquis may stand the best chance of coming out unscathed. He sold his estates to buy grain, so the Grand Secretariat may be lenient with him. The fact that the Hulian Marquis even thought of buying grain merely shows that he's been backed into a corner. He has no choice but to sacrifice what he can and start fresh. Shen Zichuan sipped the chilled soup. In letting him buy that grain, I've already done what I can. The grain the Hulian Marquis had bought with his family assets had come from Yo Tan, the prefect of Liuzhou in Jueshi. Back when Shen Zichuan had taken Yan Heru's suggestion to build a new port, Yo Tan had been their inside man in Jueshi. This prefect was especially greedy. As long as he was paid enough, he'd do anything, even if it could cost him his head. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been dealing with Yan Heru right under Jiang Qingshan's nose. Xue Xiuzhuo is too radical. If Zhang Bo were still battling Bian Sha, Kong Zhou and Sen Yu might have agreed to it. But now my hands are free. Shen Zichuan's eyes danced with points of light, reflecting the fireflies nearby. Of course, they no longer wish to fight to the death with the noble clans. Joining forces to confront their enemy, us, is their priority now. Unless the heir apparent is a fool, she will pardon the Hulian Marquis. Then why are we giving the Hulian Marquis grain? Not only was the grain Shen Zichuan bade Yo Tan sell to the Hulian Marquis offered at a fair price, it was good quality rice. It's for a good cause. We should certainly help with the relief grain. Shen Zichuan looked at Fei Sheng. All we have to do is let Yo Tan tell the truth. Understanding dawned on Fei Sheng. He laughed. Master is wise. Okay, wait. So if Yo Tan tells the truth... I'm trying to follow what that will do. But I know listen, it's Shen Zichuan, he's always thinking ahead, so I'm sure he's right about that. On the other side of the courtyard, Xiao Qie released the string, and the arrow buried itself in the bullseye. Chen Yang and the other guards cheered. Arya's arm strength is really something, Fei Sheng said. Shen Zichuan watched Xiao Qie for a few more moments before speaking again. Elder Yin's funeral arrangements are all settled. As for his remaining possessions, you're the son, so you decide. What decent thing could he possibly have? Better to throw away all those scruffy mats and tattered blankets. He'd probably scold me if I burned them as offerings to him. Fei Sheng laid a hand on the hilt of the blade hanging at his waist. I'll just keep this. This saber is nameless, as was he. Elder Yin is a hero, Shen Zichuan said. That blade ought to have a name. He and I both took you as our master. Fei Sheng grasped the blade. I'd like master to give it a name. Shen Zichuan turned the porcelain bowl in his hand. Moonlight glinted across its edge, rendering it bright as snow. A banner of 10,000 to slay Yan Luo, the king of hell. Let's name it Hellslayer. And that has a footnote. These are lines from the poem 3 Verses of May Pass by general and politician Chen Yi. Name it, Stinky. Fei Sheng lifted the hem of his robe and knelt, proclaiming, This blade shall not fail its name. After the passing of the Empress Dowager, the heir apparent's coronation could be delayed no further. The Grand Secretariat made the arrangements, fixing the date for the beginning of the 8th month, right on the heels of the Empress Dowager's funeral. They selected the Regal? Okay, I think that's just Regal with a typo, but I'm not sure. They selected the regal title Shengyin, prosperity for posterity. When Xiaoqie heard the news, he remarked, "The heir apparent has drive and spirit." When the day arrived, Kongqiu led the officials of the court to kowtow before Mingli Hall and make obeisance to the new emperor. At last, Li Jianting was the recognized sovereign of the Zhou Empire. Oh, it's Regnal? How do you say that? Regnal? Or is it like Rignal or something? Henry is causing chaos in the chat again. Regnal? Okay. Interesting. I love learning new words from something that wasn't even, like, written in English in the first place. That's cool. Guess what noble rank the new emperor is going to bestow upon Marshal Qi? Shen Zichuan had been spending his days cooped up in the manor, playing with Xiaoxun. That's so cute. Since Xiaoqie was here now, he teased him instead. There's a prize for the right answer. What's the prize? Xiaoqie said, reading over military reports as Shen Zichuan reclined against his back. It has to be worth my time. Shen Zichuan trailed his folding fan across the letter as he read, finding it quite comfortable to lean on Xiaoqie like this. Anything. Marquis. Xiaoqie caught Shen Zichuan's hand and turned it over to look at the scar there. Chudu will remember the Prince of Li Bei's ferocious rise over the lands. They will not confer a Prince of Qidong. Liu Pingyan of the Bianjun Commandery was already the Marquis of Biansha. Qi Juyan was the Grand Marshal of the 5 Commandery's troops. They would be remiss to put her on equal footing with Liu Pingyan. But since the reign of Yongyi, the Zhou Empire had conferred the title of prince to only 2 people outside of the Li clan. One was Xiao Fengshu, the Prince of Li Bei, and the other was Shen Wei, the Prince of Jianxing. Qi Juyan's military achievements weren't on par with her father Qi Shiyu's, and the imperial censors had taken a poor view of her attitude in recent years. Her conferment was already beset with difficulties. Weighing the available options, it would be the most appropriate to confer her with the title and rank of Marquis. Then I will guess Prince, Shen Zichuan murmured into Xiaoqie's ear. If I win, you have to give me a reward. Oh, blue, it probably is a word with Latin origins. That would make sense. Yeah, English is such a mashup of different languages that English speakers ourselves are just, like, confused half the time. I wonder... Shen Zichuan guessed Prince. I'm going to take a wild guess and say Prince, even though that seems less likely. Because it would just be interesting to be like, Qi Juyan, like, Prince. Like, I kind of love that. Because, Blue, you said I'm getting diabetes just looking at them. Fu Man had just changed into a fresh robe. As he strode toward Mingli Hall, the eunuchs and palace maids along the way all paused to pay their respects to him. He wanted to puff up with pride at his accomplishment, but he never forgot his place. He retreated each time he encountered a minister of the court, making himself more humble and deferential than usual. Even more humble and deferential than usual. When he arrived at Mingli Hall, the junior eunuch at the door whispered, "Her Majesty has just woken up. She's asking for you." Fu Man patted his sleeves and strode in. He took the tea tray from the palace maid and presented it to Li Jianting. "Your Majesty." Li Jianting often slept poorly. Pinching the center of her brows, She accepted the tea from Fuman and took a sip. What did the Grand Secretary say? This is the Grand Secretary's memorandum. Please take a look. Fuman produced the Grand Secretariat's note from within his sleeve and presented it to the Imperial desk. If your Majesty agrees, it can be sent out tonight. Li Jianting read the memorandum Kong Qiu had drafted and pondered for a while. Our predecessor made Lu Pingyan a marquis, too. If we confer the same title on Qi Juyin, we risk incurring Qidong's displeasure. Li Jianting often spoke to Fuman about government affairs, and so Fuman never shied away from them either. He repeated what he had heard in the Grand Secretariat's office compound, embellishing only slightly. Since Lu Guangbai defected, if Lu Pingyan had been taken to Chidu, he would have been stripped of his noble rank. His Marquis of Biansha title would no longer stand. Your Majesty is the new emperor, and Marshal Qi is a new subject of yours. Raising her to the rank of Marquis is already an immense grace. You have a point. Li Jianting set the note on the table. Then let's... Fuman was already bending to prepare the ink, when an attendant announced Kong Qiu's arrival. Li Jianting set the paper aside and summoned him in. Kong Qiu's face was ashen as he lifted the hem of his robe and sank to his knees. After he kowtowed and paid his respects, he said gravely, Your Majesty, it's about the relief grain sent to Yongcheng. A memorial from Jueshi just came in. This humble subject dared not tarry. Fuman stepped up to accept the memorial Kong Qiu held out, and placed it before Li Jianting. The moment Li Jianting opened it, her heart sank. Rumors are flying in Yongcheng. Everyone is saying with certainty that Shen Zichuan of Zhongbo has provided them secret aid, and that the grain came from him. The word is spreading far and wide. Kong Qiu looked up. If we let this go unchecked, I fear. If we stop the distribution of the relief grain now, it will only confirm Shen Zichuan's involvement. Chidu had no grain. This rice was the only source of relief for the drought-stricken Yongcheng. Li Jianting couldn't let the common folk of Yongcheng starve to death. Okay, so I'm kind of seeing something where the rumors spread and positive opinion sprouts up about Shen Zichuan. Is this the goal for the grain? Of, like, the people support him now. And I mean, I think he wants to help the people anyway, but we know that he has motives other than that, so, you know. But as Kong Qiu said, they could not let this lie. As the saying went, it only took 3 men to make a tiger. A rumor would take on the weight of truth after only a few repetitions. At that point, Shen Zichuan would have played the imperial court for fools and made himself the savior of Yongcheng. The move was underhanded and ruthless. Li Jianting finally got a first-hand taste of the schemes of the overlord of Zhongbo. Yeah. That's the end of the chapter. It is 3:55. So it's a good time for me to take a break. So I'm going to do that. I do want Shen Zichuan and Li Jianting to be friends, but I don't know if it's possible. So, yeah, he needs to get rid of Shenwei's shadow, like you said, blue. Yeah, so it makes sense for him to do things like this. Alright, I'm going to take a break. I will see y'all in 10 minutes for the end of this book. And I'm back. Hello. I saw what you were saying. It seems like the general opinion is that you don't want to see Shen Zituan as emperor. And yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it does feel like we're going towards him being emperor. It feels like his goal is to be emperor. But maybe there's some kind of twisty twist there. Maybe something else, happens. Also, Blue, you said moving the capital to Zhongbo would be an option, I guess. I was also imagining, imagine if, Shen Zituan just becomes, supreme ruler of everything, and it's, move the capital to Libei, so then Xiao Jie can be with him, and, they could be in Libei, or just something like that. I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of possibilities for, what is going to actually happen. And I am worried about how things are going to resolve with Li Jianting. Because I don't want something bad to happen to her. But I don't know how we can end up in a situation where she's not, sort of an enemy of Shen Zituan. I don't know how we get there. So, yeah. But we are on page 407. For chapter 260, which is called Conferment and Reward. Oh yeah, Blue, yeah, that's a good point. If they conquer the tribes, Zhongbo would be a perfect place to control the new empire from. Yeah, true. Reward the Helian Marquis. The gears in Li Jianting's mind whirred as she shut the memorial. He's made significant contributions in the furnishing of grain. We must reward him handsomely. Still prostrating, Kong Qiu nodded approvingly to himself. Your Majesty is wise. Whatever the truth was, the relief grain couldn't be taken back. As long as Li Jianting rewarded the Helian Marquis now, the rumors would die on their own. If Shen Zituan wanted to fight a war of benevolence and righteousness with her, then they would see who emerged the victor. Han Cheng accumulated power for himself, and attempted to force his sovereign's hand. He demonstrated intent to usurp the throne. His crimes are too heinous to be pardoned, Li Jianting said. To ensure our safety, Grand Marshal Qi apprehended the Han traitor on our behalf, an impressive achievement in itself. Furthermore, she mobilized the troops against the Qingshu tribe and won a resounding victory for the nation. For both private and public reasons, we must bestow upon her a title. Marshal Qi has long suffered the harsh conditions and bitter cold at our borders, Kong Qiu said. Since the reign of Xiande, she has earned herself many merits for coming to the aid of the throne. What title does your majesty intend to confer upon her? We've heard the Grand Marshal is known for her reputation as the windstorm through the scorching plains. Li Jianting picked up her brush and wrote 2 neat characters on the paper before her. Why not bestow upon her the title Prince of Donglie, the Scorching East? Shen Zichuan wins, everybody. Shen Zichuan wins on his bet with Xiao Qie and probably in a lot of other situations too. Kong Qiu's head shot up, but that's... Qi Juyan has thrice stepped out of Qidong to come to the throne's aid. Years ago, she set fire to the 13 camps of Bian Sha and drove deep into enemy territory to save her father. Since she assumed the post of the Grand Marshal of Qidong's 5 commanderies, the border between the 2 passes has been an impenetrable fortress. From the reign of Xiande to Tianchen, not a single soldier from Biansha has managed to penetrate our territory in Qidong. Li Jianting looked up. Why shouldn't such a loyal, steadfast, and valiant general receive the title of prince? But Marshal Qi is a woman, Kong Qiu replied. I don't think Li Jianting, I'm not a woman or a man, cares about that. It's already against custom for her to set foot on Jade Dragon Terrace to present herself before the Emperor and receive her conferment. If she were to receive the title of prince, a public outcry would ensue. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Li Jianting studied Kong Qiu. The Grand Secretary once taught me that the sovereign and his ministers ought to stand together in times of turmoil and peace. And there's a footnote. These are lines from Essentials of Government in the Zhongguan reign, a compendium on statecraft from the Tang dynasty. We should accept admonishments with grace if they are born of loyalty, and treat the valiant and the virtuous with magnanimity. Not only does Qi Juyan ably guard the frontiers on our behalf, she also captures and kills treacherous rebels for us in the capital. She offers us her sincerity and loyalty. Yet we dwell on the petty distinction between men and women. Will not such an attitude turn the hearts of all the heroes and talents in the land cold with disillusionment? Statecraft Compendium, alternate title of QJJ. She rose and stepped forward to help Kong Qiu up, her expression earnest. Teacher, as a woman, Marshal Qi is willing to don armor and slay the enemies of the state, take away her heartfelt dedication to the service of her country, and all that remains is her faithful loyalty to her sovereign. What's more, am I not myself a woman? You have taught me without reservation, and now you assist me in governing the state. Is the distinction between men and women really so important? As Li Jianting appealed to him, she shifted from the imperial we to the common I. Yet Kong Qiu couldn't return from his role as the Emperor's Grand Secretary back to merely her teacher. Beyond her heartfelt words about Qi Juyan's service, there was another reason the new emperor wished to confer a title upon Qi Juyan. Zhongbo and Li Bei were both strong, with well-trained and powerful armies. Relying on only the 8 great battalions to defend the city walls of Chidu was like preparing to throw an egg against a rock. Only Qi Juyan, who held the 300,000 troops of Qidong in her hands, could go head-to-head with the rebels. It wasn't that Kong Cho didn't understand. On the contrary, he understood all too well. Your Majesty's conferment of a title by imperial decree is already very generous to Qidong. This noble rank is truly too much. Once Qi Juyan was raised to the rank of prince, there would be no other military power in Great Zhou capable of keeping Qidong in check. The rise and fall of the entire dynasty would come to depend on her troops alone. And if she secured yet another victory in the coming years, what more could they offer her as a reward? She would have already attained the same position as Xiao Fengshu. Not only would there be nowhere for her to rise, there would be no more Li Bei to hold her in check. Li Jianting knew all this, too. But she also knew that however loyal Qi Juyan was, she was also on good terms with the Xiao clan of Li Bei. This title was the only chip she had left to offer. There lies a sharp sword on the tongue that kills without spilling a drop of blood. There's a footnote for that. A quote from Lin Long Xiang, an anonymous vernacular novel from the Qing dynasty. Scissors in hand, Yao Wenyu was doing an abysmal job of trimming the potted plant on his lap. Once the rumors spread, it will be difficult to eradicate them completely. The new emperor rewarded the Hulian Marquis because our actions forced her hand. Mark my words, she still intends to kill him. It seems to me that the new emperor takes after neither Xue Shoujuo nor Kongqiu in her decisions. Shen Zichuan bent to pick up the butchered stems from the ground. She has her own mind. She has ascended the throne and seen the world, Yao Wenyu said. How could she remain a willing pawn? She is already staking it all by raising Marshal Qi to the Prince of Donglie. Your lordship has gained a slight upper hand in providing relief to Yongcheng, but you've also put Yotan in a perilous position. If the Hulian Marquis confesses his name under torture, then our inside man in Liuzhou will be forfeit. Once it's completed, our new port in Liuzhou will see goods moving throughout the entire realm. Shen Zichuan tossed the prune stems into the pond. The handling of tariffs at the port is of utmost importance. Yotan is not a fit candidate for such a role. Since Xue Shoujuo is unstoppable when it comes to auditing the accounts, we must warn Yotan to pay closer attention there. After all, he has a whole heap of bad debts at home. I fear he'll be hard-pressed if he comes under scrutiny. Yotan was a money grubber. A man like this was convenient to use, but not to retain. The most reliable connections Shen Zichuan had in Jueshi were what remained of the Shi clan's contacts, yet he had still chosen Yotan to do business with the Hulian Marquis. Yao Wenyu didn't pursue this in depth. His master seemed to have his own considerations for this choice. Even if Yao Wenyu saw through it, he wouldn't make it known. The plant on his lap grew more and more bare. Per Ge Qingqing's latest report, Xue Shouyi has already gotten what he wanted. A plum position indeed, in the palace depository, managing all incoming and outgoing supplies in the capital. As long as he's keen, he'll be able to fill his pockets. Xue Shouyi has been the rich young master of a noble clan all his life. It's no surprise he couldn't stand becoming a destitute little clerk. Xue Shoujuo has been careful when it comes to promoting or conferring titles upon his kin. His reluctance to favor the Xue clan has long incurred the disapproval of his family. Shen Zichuan paused to watch Jiran chase after Xiao Xun as they played at the end of the walkway. After examining you that day, Jiran has never come back to check on you. Xue Shoujuo is thorough in everything he does. He intended to kill me. He would never show mercy. Even if the venerable master were alive, there would be no cure for these legs or this poison. Jiran is young. You mustn't pressure him about it again. Yao Yu's expression was placid. No need to force the matter. Let's leave it to heaven's will. I don't like it. Xiao Shun fell on the ground and scrambled back to his feet, then ran away with bits of grass stuck to his clothes. Yao Yu set down the scissors. He'd lost interest in the plant. Li Bei's young heir is strong and healthy. He is neither arrogant nor delicate. He's intelligent by nature and excels in his studies. With the teaching and guidance of my lord's advisors, he is sure to live up to all of our expectations. Shen Zichuan said nothing. Liao Yu smiled. He gifted the potted plant to Shen Zichuan. My lord still hesitates. Shen Zichuan raised his good left hand and pointed with his fan toward the west. That world is a cage. Chudu was the freest place in the land, and the world's worst prison. So that sounds like he doesn't want to be the emperor in Chudu. At least. Like, he might still want to have power over Chudu, but he probably doesn't want to be the emperor there, unless I'm misunderstanding him somehow. He's at least saying, let's not put that upon a child. Like, let's not raise someone to be put in that position. A dragon could produce 9 sons, and they would all differ from each other, Yao Yu said. Are the wolves of Li Bei only meant to run across the grasslands? The heir is bright and intelligent. Why not ask him? Oh yeah, and Blue, you're right. He doesn't want that wolf puppy to be the next Xiao Qie. Xiao Shun was tired from playing, but his eyes were still bright. He insisted on holding Shen Zichuan's hand as they walked back. As they passed the pond, he pointed at the water and said to Shen Zichuan, Our Shushu, this is a bright mirror. He called Xiao Qie Arshu, second uncle, and so Xiao Qie had taught him to address Shen Zichuan as Shushu, his little second uncle. That's right, Shen Zichuan said. By looking in the mirror, you can straighten your clothes. There's a footnote for this. A line attributed to Emperor Taizong of Tang in the Old Book of Tang, compiled by Liu Xu. He who uses bronze as his mirror can tidy his apparel. He who uses history as his mirror can see the rise and fall of a dynasty. He who uses other people as his mirror can understand his own strengths and weaknesses. Facing the water's surface, Xiao Shun patted his robe clean. When Xiao Qie was this age, he was still racing after colts and sleeping all day in the tall grass. Xiao Shun resembled his father in appearance, but from what Xiao Qie had divulged, though Xiao Jiming had received far fewer beatings than Xiao Qie as a child, even he hadn't been as quiet and composed as his son. Did you come looking for Mr. Yuanzhuo today to teach you? Shen Zichuan asked. Xiao Shun nodded. Learning makes you wise. There are many learned gentlemen in the manor. Shen Zichuan raised his folding fan slightly to point at Yao Yu's room. Why do you pick him? Mr. Changfeng said Mr. Yuanzhuo is the most learned and knowledgeable of all. Xiao Shun tilted his head back to look at Shen Zichuan. I want the best. After a moment's silence, Shen Zichuan asked, And what if there was no Yuanzhuo? Don't say that. Mr. Yuanzhuo said, He who stands on his toes is unsteady, while he who takes overlong strides cannot go far. And there's another footnote. From chapter 24 of the Tao Te Ching by Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, considered the founder of Taoism. Xiao Shun pointed at himself. Even with the best teacher in the world, I must first be able to understand. I can't reach for what is beyond my grasp. The way he spoke was mature for his age. At merely 7 years old, he had already far surpassed his peers in learning. He said, I don't, like, this 7-year-old saying this stuff. So Blue, so Tang Zhiqing is basically telling us that regardless of whether Shen Zichuan will be emperor or not, Xiao Xun will be emperor. Yeah, I don't know. I just want him to be okay and happy. I just want everyone to be okay and happy. Is that too much to ask? Inspired by Yao and Yu, the other advisors in the manor occasionally engaged in philosophical discussions when they had no governmental affairs to tend to. Xiao Xun was bored by these discussions, but whenever Xiao Qiye handled military business, or Shen Zichuan discussed political affairs, he always sat off to the side and listened. That is cute. Oh my god, we have art. Okay, okay. Look at this. That's amazing. Are you working so hard because you want to become a learned man like Mr. Yuan Zhuo? A strange expression came over Xiao Xun's face. He shook his head. I'm not learned. I want learned men. He pointed at Fei Sheng, standing guard. And I'm not a general. I want generals, too. And he doesn't say this part. To the learned, the sage beckons. Into my trap, the talented walk. And these are lines spoken by Emperor Taizong of Tang in reference to the imperial examinations, which scholars took to earn a place as an official within the emperor's government. It sounds like this child, like, wants to be emperor. Oh god, what? I'm sorry, I just lost my place completely. Where are we? I just flipped the book closed. Oh god. Okay, sorry, bear with me for a second. Okay, there's the art. Okay, here we are. Whether it be civil ministers or military generals, Xiao Xun wanted the best. Henry, you said, I think this is Shen Zichuan's biological son, actually. This was a grand ambition that sought to recruit all the virtuous talents of the world beneath him. Shen Zichuan squeezed Xiao Xun's hand and spoke no further. I'm just, like, thinking about that in the context of Chudu being a cage. But this kid is, like, this 7-year-old has, like, political aspirations. It's wild. After her ascension, the new emperor granted a general amnesty to all in the land, and many of the personnel in the 6 ministries received new posts. On the day of Xue Shouyi's promotion to custodian of the palace depository, he held a great banquet on Donglong Street and invited everyone he knew. He wanted them all to witness his comeback. After getting himself thoroughly drunk, he staggered home with Ge Qingqing's help. The tables have turned. Fortune is on my side. What's more, I'm a legitimate son of direct descent. He held up a wobbling finger. My courtesy name is Ping Jing. Ping Jing. Serene. Xue Shoujuo's courtesy name is Yanqing, extending integrity. Whose integrity? He patted his own chest and laughed. Mine. It's mine. I'm his eldest brother. It's only natural that I, he paused to belch, stand higher than him. Ge Qingqing swayed alongside him and concurred. Yes, yes, it is just as my lord says. Lord, Xue Pingjing said loudly. That's right. I'm the lord. Why do I have to take my cues from him? He's a low-down son of a concubine who stole my position as the head of the family. He divided up the family estates and kicked us all out. He's really the most cold-blooded and ruthless man. He waved his hand, as if to dismiss Xue Shoujuo from his consideration. Look at him. He's become a vital minister of the court overnight, yet he won't even help out his own kin. Is this something a real man would do? Ge Qingqing let him ramble. You're all afraid of him. Every puff of Xue Pingjing's breath reeked of wine. What's there to be afraid of? He's born to a lowly maid. Back when we were in school, I could already tell you he would never be satisfied with what he had. At this point, he began to choke up. I'm his older brother. Why should he be more talented than me? When our family told him to write essays for me, he refused. Had he just done as he was told, I'd be an important minister now too. The longer Xue Pingjing cried, the sadder he became. He grasped the wall for support and puked. He said I favored my concubine and neglected my son's studies, so he wouldn't allow me to even see my own child. Paying no attention to the mess at his feet, Xue Pingjing covered his face and bawled. How heartless can you be? Even if my son grows up to be an incompetent loafer, he's still my son. He stole another man's son. He's not fit to be called a human. Ge Qingqing soothed him. Now that my lord has also been promoted and is familiar with the gong in the palace, there will be ample opportunities for you to get your son back. Xue Pingjing wiped the tears from his cheeks and clutched Ge Qingqing's arm. Hatefully, he spat. I watched him rise to the heights of power, and if I have my way, I'll watch him plunge all the way down. I know that Shen Zichuan has basically said that he has plans to use Xue Shoujuo's weakness, being his brother, against him. So I'm very curious how that's going to go down. And that's the end of the chapter. We are on page 419 for chapter 261, Might of an Emperor. The closer we get to the end of this book, the more nervous I get. Like, what is yet to happen in this book? The next day at noon, the Hulian Marquis headed to Mingli Hall to give thanks for his reward. Fu Man stopped him outside. Your lordship, please wait. Her Majesty is resting at the moment. She won't be able to see you until later. He turned aside and continued. If my lord is not in a hurry, you can wait here for now. The Hulian Marquis had come expressly to demonstrate his loyalty. Since the rumors had begun to spread in Yongcheng, he'd been unable to sleep, fearing every moment that Li Jianting would fly into an imperial rage and throw the whole Fei clan behind bars. He nodded at once and stayed right where he was, waiting in the sun. It was noon, and the scorching heat was unbearable. After less than an hour, the Hulian Marquis was sweating profusely. He didn't dare say a word, but his heart sank with every passing minute. Under the silent gazes of the eunuchs around him, he gradually became aware that he was suffering the new emperor's punishment. Your lordship, Fu Man called softly, why not wait in the side hall? It's so hot out. The Hulian Marquis squeezed out a smile and dabbed his brow with his sleeve. I'm fine. Also, yes, you're so right. Ge Qingqing has the least cool job out of all of Shen Zichuan's guys. For real. He was the one who had made arrangements for Yongcheng's relief grain. Now that his gesture had gone awry, he couldn't absolve himself of blame. If Li Jianting suspected him of colluding with the rebels, his head would surely roll. As long as he could keep his life, he was willing to wait on his knees, much less stand in the sun. More minutes passed. He felt as if his back was pressed against a searing iron plate. His face was ghastly pale, and his sweat was no longer simply from the heat. His vision was swimming, and sheer willpower was all that kept him on his feet. The beaded curtain swung slightly as Feng Chuan leaned out to announce in a soft voice, Her Majesty is awake. Move quickly. Don't hold Her Majesty up from government affairs. The eunuchs and palace maids waiting under the eaves filed in with basins in hand. Soon after, the Hylian Marquis heard his name being called. Lifting the hem of his robe, he climbed the steps to the hall. Everything was a blur before his aged eyes, and he had to hold on to Fuman for support. Oh dear, Fuman looked worried. My lord, is my lord okay? The Hylian Marquis' chest tightened, and his stomach churned with nausea. He'd been in the sun so long he had heat stroke. But Li Jianting was waiting in the hall, so the Marquis hastily steadied himself, though both his legs were trembling. He murmured to Fuman, I'm okay. There are basins of ice inside, Fuman whispered. You can go in and cool down. The Hylian Marquis strode through the door and knelt with his head lowered in obeisance. His voice was feeble as he said, This humble subject pays his respects to your majesty. Long live your majesty. Li Jianting did not look up from the memorial she held. The Hylian Marquis prostrated himself, not daring to move. He even quieted his breathing. The sweat on his brow dampened his sleeves. We have seen from Liang Cuishan's memorial that the Fei clan has encroached on the commoners' fields in Chuancheng. Li Jianting took a sip of the cooled tea on her desk and continued gently. Did you know about this? All the sweat on his body turned cold. This humble subject is aware. The Chief Surveillance Bureau has impeached this humble subject, while the memorandum issued by the Grand Secretariat has asked the officials from the Ministry of Justice to work in collaboration with the Ministry of Revenue to audit the field taxes in Chuancheng. Xue Shouzhuo of the Court of Judicial Review has also been asked to supervise. The Ministry of Revenue is saying the Fei clan of Chuancheng conspired with the Pan clan of Dancheng and the Han clan of Wucheng to deceive the imperial court, embezzle tax money, and inflict harsh punishments on the commoners under your care. To escape this, hundreds of people fled Chuancheng last year. Is this all true? The Hylian Marquis was burning with anxiety. Lifting his head, he took a few gulps of air and blurted desperately, This humble subject dares not. You dare not? Li Jianting flung the memorial at him. Are you saying no one in Chuancheng died of starvation last winter? Not only did you collude with the Pan clan, you conspired with the merchants of Jueshi, and used the Chuancheng commoners' grain to ingratiate yourself with those rebels. Did you think we didn't know? Did you think the Grand Secretary was unaware? The Imperial Court has had its eyes on you leeches for a long time. The Hylian Marquis flattened himself almost to the ground. Tears in his eyes, he cried, Your Majesty, Your Majesty! During the reign of Xiande, the Hua faction and Pan faction monopolized state power with the abetment of the Empress Dowager. This humble subject had no choice but to do as they wished to preserve the lives of my family. He knocked his head against the floor and sobbed. The common folk of Chuancheng are like my own sons and daughters. They've been under the charge of my Fei clan since the great founder of the dynasty established the empire. If this subject hadn't been pushed into a corner, I would never have had the gall to commit such an inhuman act. As for the grain, Your Majesty, this humble subject saw how worried Your Majesty was over providing relief to Yongcheng. I couldn't help but feel anxious myself, and that was how I fell for that traitor Shen's trap. In the face of imminent death, the Hylian Marquis wised up and disavowed himself of any involvement with the rebels, taking special care not to mention Yan Heru. Han Cheng was a tyrant. Numerous times, he attempted to coerce this humble subject into helping him commit regicide and proclaim himself emperor. The Hylian Marquis' face was awash in tears as he raised his head to look at Li Jianting. But this humble subject is a court minister of the Li clan. I could never take his side. During the banquet that night, this subject put my own life on the line to protect Your Majesty. I deserve punishment for my crimes, but I ask that Your Majesty spare my son and daughter in consideration of our great founder's eternal kindness. Li Jianting seemed moved by his words. That's right. In an act of kindness, Our imperial ancestor handed the 8 cities to you people. Yet for the sake of your own profits, you committed such a grave mistake. This subject is aware that my crime deserves death, the Hylian Marquis sobbed. My family owes several tens of thousands in field taxes. This debt, even if there is only one person left in the Fey clan, we will spare no effort to pay it back. As long as the Hylian Marquis lived, not only would he return all of the misappropriated fields, he'd also make up for the arrears in field taxes. Chuancheng's location held more strategic importance than Dancheng's. It was close to Dicheng, connected to the waterways, and inextricably linked to Jueshi. There really was a chance he could make up the sum he owed. But like the rest of the wily old foxes in the noble clans, the Hylian Marquis carefully didn't mention how long it might take for the sum of field taxes to be fully paid. Li Jianting turned away from him, seemingly in contemplation. After a time, she said, "Your crimes are unforgivable. But the fact that you were willing to help the people of Yongcheng is a testament to your lingering conscience. We shall spare your life." Relieved, the Hylian Marquis bowed low again. "Your Majesty is gracious. However, you formed cliques for your own selfish ends, betraying the favor our imperial ancestor showed your clan. The title Hylian Marquis can no longer be retained." She didn't even give him a chance to gasp for breath before continuing. "And then there is the matter of your encroachment on the commoners' fields." The Hylian Marquis's heart leapt into his throat. "Fu Man," Li Jianting called toward the door, "drag those lowlifes out." Fu Man acknowledged her order, and soon after, the guards escorted several men in shackles into the open space before the hall, and forced them to kneel. Pushing himself up, the Hylian Marquis looked back through the beaded curtain, and realized that these were all officials he himself had placed in the Chuancheng Yemen. Our imperial ancestor may have handed Chuancheng to the Fei clan, but the 8 cities still take the surname Li. It is only by virtue of our amnesty that you escape the death penalty today. These people have deceived their superiors and subordinates, trampled the law, and committed countless atrocities. Li Jianting strode up to the Marquis and patted him gently on the shoulder. They forced the common people out of their homes. They deserve to die. Fu Man. Fu Man raised his voice. "Ready? Strike." The moment the word left his mouth, the iron-wrapped staff struck human flesh. The Hylian Marquis shuddered down to his toes at the sound. The prisoners' mouths were gagged. They hadn't been dragged out to the Duancheng gate as per the usual flogging rules, nor were they wrapped in cotton padding. They remained in only their inner garments, their official robes long since stripped from them. The staff-wielding eunuchs were all old members of the Eastern Depot, and they struck with intent to kill. A few hits later, all that was left was a bloody pulp of mangled flesh. The Hylian Marquis's ears were buzzing. It was cool inside Mingli Hall, but that only made him shiver harder. As the sounds of flogging continued, one of the prisoners tilted his head back. The blood in his mouth soaked through the white cloth gag, as he sobbed and whimpered at the Marquis. All of Mingli Hall was quiet. The eunuchs standing in solemn silence with their hands at their sides. Only the thud, thud, thud of the flogging persisted. After an hour, the acrid stench of blood filled the air. Li Jianting didn't look at the Marquis again. "You may go." It feels familiar to the beginning of the book, Shen Zichuan's flogging, or something else. The Hylian Marquis tripped over himself, scrambling up, and fell back onto his knees on the cold, hard floor. Fu Man flicked a look at the junior eunuchs, and they hoisted the Marquis up to march him out. As they stepped through the vast pool of blood, the Marquis's downcast eyes widened. Okay, yeah, to Shen Zichuan being flogged. That makes sense. Although I believe they purposely, they got them to let up on his flogging a little bit. Oh, but you're saying, is she sending Shenzi a message with the flog? Like, I feel like the flogging is mostly to send the Hylian Marquis a message. But could she be sending Shenzi a message about the flogging, too? That's interesting. Maybe. As they stepped through the vast pool of blood. Wait, if I read everything, yes. As they stepped through the vast pool of blood, the Marquis's downcast eyes widened. Reflected in that crimson puddle was his own official's robe. He staggered a few steps and felt the world spin. In the next moment, he passed out cold from fright. Yeah, they held back on Shenzi at the Empress Dowager's orders. Interesting. Li Jianting sat back in her chair. Through the shadows cast on the window, she could see Fuman ordering the guards to clear the bodies from the ground. Feng Chuan picked up the memorial off the floor and said quietly, "This scene is truly horrifying." "You've never seen true carnage." Li Jianting's eyes were hidden from view in the shadows. When the pox ran rampant through Dancheng, desperate refugees crowded the entrance of Chudu. Some of them tried to dig their way in through the ditches. The ditches clogged with their bodies until the stench of corpses hung in the air. No one saved them. That was truly horrifying. Feng Chuan set the memorial down so lightly, his fingers never touched her desk. Tough times call for tough governance. Li Jianting paused. Let the Hylian Marquis live a while longer. Has Shui Yanqing come to see you recently? Bending at the waist, Feng Chuan answered, "He came to inquire after your Majesty's wellness." Sen Shunyi is a long-time veteran of the imperial court. His misgivings regarding Zhongbo are evidence of his foresight. We rejected Shui Yanqing's ideas this time, Li Jianting said. We ought to make it up to him. Oh yeah, Blue, you said Shenzi was right there. What do you mean no one saved them? That's what she was talking about, right? And the pox ran rampant through Dancheng. It was the pox. Was it the pox? I forgot if that's what it was or if it was something else, so I wasn't totally sure at first if she was talking about what happened on screen in the book or, like, something else. Lord Shui keeps his hands clean and lives frugally even at home. He has quite the reputation in the Imperial College for just this reason. If your Majesty were to reward him with money and treasures... Feng Chuan lowered his eyes, trailing off. Yeah, the ditches was... Yeah, I was thinking she was talking about something else because the thing about people trying to get in through the ditches, I don't think that happened in that situation. But yeah, there was a disease because there was flooding in the ditches, but people didn't try to get in through the ditches. Yeah, she said Dancheng. It's okay, there's a lot of stuff happens. I think this is something that happened that Li Jianting, I guess, was around or experienced, but we didn't see it, like, in... Yeah. No, it's okay. There's just too many plots and too many things. Yeah. If your Majesty were to reward him with money and treasures... Feng Chuan lowered his eyes, trailing off. Li Jianting pondered this. Jiang Qingshan has made meritorious contributions in raising grain, and he treats the common people as his own children. Let the Grand Secretary draft a memorandum. I've heard his wife, a woman from the Liu family, has an equally virtuous reputation. Reward them together. Jiang Qingshan was Xue Xiujuo's capable right-hand man in Jueshi. Rewarding him, she would also appease Xue Xiujuo. Besides, Li Jianting still had more uses for Jiang Qingshan. There was currently no one holding the new prince of Donglie, Qi Juyin, in check. But the Qidong garrison troops needed military provisions, and Li Jianting had placed the key to those granaries in Jiang Qingshan's hands. Feng Chun acknowledged the order at a murmur and retreated, his footfalls careful and quiet. The new emperor has shown her mettle. Her application of checks and balances is impressive. Xiaoqie pushed aside the military reports on the desk and read through the news from Chudu again. To pacify Xue Xiujuo, she rewarded Jiang Qingshan. In doing so, she can keep a leash on the Grand Marshal and hold him as leverage against Xue Xiujuo at the same time. He holds sway over the pragmatist faction and the Imperial College. Xue Xiujuo put a new emperor on the throne so easily. Who's to say he couldn't do it again? She's right to be wary of him. Jiang Qingshan is a major official and successful administrator of a vast region, but he never received the Li clan's favor during the eras of Xiande and Tianchen. Now he will enjoy a meteoric rise. Shen Zichuan, sitting across from him, set aside a letter from Yu Xiaozai. But I do find her method of dealing with the Hulian Marquis unexpected. It is. Xiaoqie looked up at him. She's bold. Shen Zichuan had truly never expected Li Jianting to use such a tactic as flogging corrupt officials to death to intimidate the Hulian Marquis. He dipped his brush in ink. I thought she would find an excuse to have him killed. She is surprisingly patient. That's interesting, because we see an example of Shen Zichuan not knowing or being surprised by something that Li Jianting did. So she is capable of surprising him. The Hulian Marquis originally made excuses and cried poverty. Now he's been so frightened he's desperate to make up the deficit, even going so far as to sell his manners. Xiaoqie slouched in the chair and tilted his face up to the ceiling. The girl emperor adopts a policy of both benevolence and intimidation. She's more flexible than the relentless Xue Xiujuo. Upon seeing how she treated the Hulian Marquis, the noble clans will surely take the initiative to make up the tax deficit now, hoping it will give them the same slim chance of survival. The Grand Secretariat had begun investigating these accounts in the first place, for the sake of the fields and money. Had there been no Shen Zichuan or Xiaoqie in the equation, Li Jianting would perhaps have gone with Xue Xiujuo's method, and insisted on getting to the bottom of each case. But this girl was unbelievably shrewd. She had seen that there was truth in Sen Yu's words. Compared to the 8 great clans, Shen Zichuan was a far more terrifying threat. Impressive. Shen Zichuan held up the brush and traced Xiaoqie's eyes in the air. Now this is a real emperor. I never used to believe any person is born to be emperor, but she is indeed extraordinarily gifted. And to think she spent only 5 years studying in a noble's estate. Xiaoqie leaned across the table and took hold of Shen Zichuan's wrist. Want your prize? I was in the Temple of Guilt for only 5 years, too. Under the table, Shen Zichuan kicked off his wooden clog and inched his foot up along the inside of Xiaoqie's calf. He loosened his grip on the brush and let it drop onto the table, leaving a streak of ink across the paper. Pressing a finger down on the bridge of Xiaoqie's nose, he said, "Hurry up and give it to me." Well, we're on page 429 for chapter 262. I believe this is the last chapter of the book. And who knows, I might be turning off monetization for this stream after it's done. That's what I do when there is a sex scene, and they do like to put them at the end of the book, so maybe I don't know. If I do, I'm afraid I'll break... Oh, did I say the chapter title is Separate Ways? If I do, I'm afraid I'll break your back, Xiaoqie said, the ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Although Jiran had given no explicit instructions, it was true that Shen Zichuan's waist and back couldn't handle the physical exertion. Shen Zichuan wavered. He was about to set his foot back down when Xiaoqie grasped his ankle and pressed Shen Zichuan's foot against himself. Oh. Shen Zichuan dragged out the word lazily. So you want me to quench my thirst with the sight of plums and sate myself on fantasy. It's getting late. Even so, Xiaoqie didn't let go. Shen Zichuan was about to say more, but the hand on his ankle began to wander. If Marshal Qi is still averse to deploying troops by the 9th month, I won't wait any longer. Xiaoqie's clothing was all in order. Looking only at his upper body, no observer would notice anything amiss. Even his voice was no different from how it usually sounded. If her moves so far are any indication, this girl emperor won't agree to the Grand Marshal's deployment. Besides, Shen Zichuan's voice melted away. Xiaoqie had taken off his sock. The tablecloth hung down, hiding the space beneath. Spurred by Xiaoqie's guiding hand, Shen Zichuan's knee pressed against the bottom of the table. The arch of his bare foot was treading on that intricately woven robe, and the fine material rubbed against his sole, its softness a sheath for the hardness within. That's crazy work. I can't. It's okay. I thought this was gonna be a foot thing. Besides, Marshal Qi has to consider that. Why are they still talking about this? Okay. Besides, Marshal Qi has to consider the 5 commanderies too. Xiaoqie picked up the discussion right where Shen Zichuan had left off. Penetrating deep into the desert takes time and effort. She has to weigh her priorities. It's possible not even Qi Shiyu would endure such a prolonged campaign. The corners of Shen Zichuan's eyes reddened, betraying the waves of heat rising in him. And just the other day, you told General Liu you would wait for Qidong. The girl emperor hadn't shown her mettle then. Based on how things are going, chances of Qidong deploying troops are slim. Xiaoqie released his teasing grip. Released his teasing grip on Shen Zichuan's foot. This year, you solved the problem of food by gathering grain from the 4 prefectures of Huaizhou, Chazhou, Szizhou, and Hezhou. Although we made it for the spring plowing, we've lost the Huaizhou granary. Now that Tao Ming has fled, the imperial court will send someone else to manage it. It'll be hard to make any deal with them again next year. And with the port of Yongyi closed and the Shi clan's copper mines shut down, the business from Li Bei's trade market will be cut in half. Lanzhou, we can't afford to feed the Qidong garrison troops again next year. Although Chudu hadn't provided any grain when Qidong moved against the Qingshu tribe recently, Qi Juyan hadn't hesitated. Inquiring minds in the imperial courts had to be wondering where her confidence came from. Aside from Shen Zichuan, who in the world could be generous enough to feed a whole garrison? We're just going back into, like, strategy and facts now. We're just sidestepping that whole thing, I guess. Like, spring plowing. Oh my god. Okay. Shui Shoujua was no fool. He was well aware of who had given the garrison troops their grain. He simply hadn't rubbed the knowledge in Qi Juyan's face. When Qidong had deployed troops this year, they had left the military fields of 3 of the 5 commanderies untended, which meant the harvest would be diminished accordingly. As a result, Qi Juyin would require even more provisions from outside Qidong than in the past. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that the spring plowing in the commoners' fields had proceeded as usual, so she only had the military stomachs to worry about. Even so, the amount of food necessary to feed 300,000 soldiers was frighteningly large, never mind the rations needed to sustain an invasion in the desert. Such an expedition was on a wholly different scale from the attacks she'd led against the Qingshu tribe and Gadal. After their victory at Duanzhou, Zhongbo's expenditure for fortifications and defense was bound to increase. Not only that, the newly rebuilt form of the 6 prefectures was beginning to take shape. Y'all, in the chat, I think it's on purpose, and I don't know if it's the translators or if it was like this originally. I would like to think that it was like this originally. They just, had to pick the right words to translate it to. And where was I? After their victory at Duanzhou, Zhongbo's expenditure for fortifications and defense was bound to increase. Not only that, the newly rebuilt form of the 6 prefectures was beginning to take shape. Shen Zichuan had to supply year-round military provisions to Zhongbo's 120,000 garrison troops, on top of supplying Li Bei's 120,000 armored cavalrymen. If they added the Qidong garrison troops to the equation, Shen Zichuan alone would be shouldering the burden of 540,000 men and horses. Wang Xian wrote to me. He said he sent you a letter a fortnight ago, laying out the stakes. Xiaoqie shifted into a more comfortable position. You didn't reply. The sole of Shen Zichuan's foot was still pressed up against the bulge in Xiaoqie's pants. Leaning back in his chair, Shen Zichuan said, "Half a month ago, the advisors had yet to draw up a proposed budget. I set Wang Xian's letter aside until I could answer it." The advisors in the manor are good, but they come mostly from the countryside, not the capital. They are talented, but not as familiar with this work as court officials like Wang Xian. Wang Xian served as the secretary for the Ministry of Revenue and often engaged with the Ministry of War. Every year he had to deal with officers like me, who came to the capital demanding money and grain. There's probably no one better acquainted with the military expenditures and grain requirements of the various regions. While Xiaoqie had been resting at home, he'd been spending his time mulling over this issue of the military provisions. It would be wonderful for the 3 armies to join forces, but it was likely too difficult. The equipment of the Li Bei armored cavalry wore out too fast, and the supply squadron had to escort craftsmen for repairs, in addition to transporting materials and provisions. Once the supply squadron stepped across the front lines, there were no roads constructed that could take them further east. The barren grounds of the desert were the territory of the 12 tribes. The squadron transporting military provisions would require an escort of additional troops for their protection, but increasing manpower meant increasing provisions yet again. And the farther east the Li Bei armored cavalry went, the more they would consume. Furthermore, they had to prepare for all contingencies along the way. It was much harder planning an invasion than fighting a defensive battle. Last year, Xue Shouzuo abandoned Luoxia Pass and the Xue's ancestral city of Chuancheng, and put his focus on the 13 cities of Jueshi instead. We didn't think much of it at the time. Shen Zichuan sighed. Worry knit his brows. Only now do I see how impressive a move this was. Who wouldn't want Qi Juyin's military might for their own? Shen Zichuan wanted it too. If he held the 5 commanderies of Qidong, it would be impossible for Qidu to turn the tide, even if Li Jianting were the Guangzhong emperor reincarnated. All along, Xue Shouzuo had ignored the fighting in Zhongbo and Li Bei. He had stood by at the start of the year, as Shen Zichuan recruited soldiers and bought horses, and he hadn't even pursued the matter of where Qidong's military grain had come from. Yet it seemed he had just been biding his time while Shen Zichuan continued to burn through his resources. Jiang Qingshan is truly an exceptional administrator. No wonder the Emperor wants No wonder the Emperor wants to use him to control Xue Xiuzhuo. That man has shouldered the burden of all the Zhou Empire's granaries with his dauntlessness alone. The look in Xiao Qia's eyes was deep and penetrating. Lanzhou, the battle you're about to fight is even harder than mine. I swear that's on purpose. Shen Zichuan had delayed answering Wang Xian's letter out of consideration for Xiao Qia. Similarly, Xiao Qia was now giving up on the Qidong garrison troops out of consideration for Shen Zichuan. Xiao Qia pushed back the chair and bent to pick up Shen Zichuan's wooden clogs. He didn't put them on for Shen Zichuan, but set them neatly aside. Relinquishing his grip on Shen Zichuan's foot, he leaned over to stroke his cheek. "I'll fight mine by myself," he whispered. This time, when the corners of Shen Zichuan's expressive eyes reddened, it wasn't from the tides of passion. Okay, there's a scene break after that. Can someone just... What's happening here? Did I miss something in, like, the emotional tide of this? What is going on? What does that mean? I know the chapter is called Separate Ways, but, like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Because I think... No. Because I think Xiao Qia was partially just saying you're... I mean, I guess it's sort of a double meaning. I feel like what he was saying was, you're a little bit incapacitated right now, so I'm gonna go take care of something by myself. And then also, okay, also, like, he's fighting his fight for Li Bei. Shen Zichuan is fighting his fight. They're separate. Okay. Okay. No, that makes sense. I just, for a second, I was like, did Xiao Qia say something that upset Shen Zichuan? But, okay. I think I get what's happening there now. The watchman's clapper struck, marking the late hour. Feng Chuan, still awake, sat on a stool, leaning against the foot of Li Jianting's bed, and hugging his knees. After almost an hour, he heard Li Jianting say from behind the lowered drapes, "Aren't you going to sleep?" He buried his chin in his knees, partially concealing his delicate face. "Your Majesty has had difficulty sleeping for several days. Maybe we should summon an imperial physician after all." Li Jianting opened her eyes and turned her face away. "I'm just not used to sleeping here." Silence descended over the palace hall. "Did you ever meet Shen Zichuan?" Li Jianting asked. "I saw him during the reign of Xiande, when he had just been released from the Temple of Guilt. Rumors have it that his mother was a dancer from Duanzhou." Li Jianting seemed to find it hard to believe. "Is this true?" "Yes." Feng Chuan shifted his numb legs. "He's the 8th son of Shen Wei, of common birth. He wasn't favored in the Prince of Jianqing's manor. They sent him away to a private residence in Duanzhou very early on. He's connected somehow to Ji Gong, who used to be a vice commander of the Embroidered Uniform Guard when he was alive. When Duanzhou fell, Shen Zichuan was in the Chashu sinkhole." After a moment of silence, Li Jianting said, "Qi Huilian is quite a character. To cast aside his prejudices and impart all his knowledge to him without reservation." "Perhaps, but Shen Zichuan is small-minded and vindictive." Feng Chuan turned his head to the side. "There was bad blood between him and Jilei, so he made Jilei suffer a fate worse than death. That day at the banquet, if Han Sheng hadn't been so thick-headed as to keep resisting, Your Majesty might very well have stripped him of his position and exiled him to Zhongbo. Then we would have seen how Shen Zituan treated him. No doubt he would have made Han Chung wish he were dead. The shadows of the trees outside stretched over the ground. The palace this late at night was deathly still. Li Jianting suddenly changed the subject. Are you Muru's younger brother by blood? A crack appeared in Feng Chuan's placid expression, but he didn't reply rashly. You were a eunuch, even before Muru entered the palace. But she was already Prince Chu's favored concubine back then. Why did you have to enter the palace to suffer? Li Jianting's gaze shifted slightly toward him. You're not like Fu Man, who went to the eunuch school, but you're well-versed in the classics. Given Muru's background, just being able to read would be impressive in itself. Feng Chuan immediately knelt on the ground. This humble servant. We can see that your ears aren't newly pierced. But the former emperor never rewarded you with earrings. It's highly unlikely that he would have rewarded any eunuch so. Boys who wear precious gems on their ears at an early age are usually of noble blood. Feng Chuan. Is he, like, not even a eunuch or something? Or is it like he's a eunuch, but he has this noble background and there's some crazy history as to why he's a eunuch now? Feng Chuan. Li Jianting propped herself up and paused for a moment before peering through the lowered drapes. Where exactly did you come from? There's a scene break, so we don't get to see how that scene plays out right now, I guess. The chin strings shuddered discordantly, jolting Chao Tianya out of his trance. He raised his hand to rub the center of his brow, only to realize that the skin on the pad of his finger had torn. Ooh. Marshal Qi surely has yet to reply because she is displeased with the governor for proposing she hand over the Qingshu tribe's territory to He Rigu. God, right, how could I forget about that? Yao Wenyu paused and looked through the curtain into the inner chamber. This is a tough one. We worry about creating a rift with Qidong. Kongling followed Yao Wenyu's gaze and called. Song Yue seems restless. Why not come out and have tea with us? Chao Tianya wiped the blood off with his thumb and leaned back in the rattan chair with a smile. If it's at Mr. Chengfeng's invitation, how can I refuse? He rose, setting the chin on the table, then lifted the curtain and stepped out. The weather was fine today, and a tea table had been set up under the eaves. Rather than discussing official business, it looked more like the gentlemen were merely enjoying tea. Yao Wenyu was dressed in a green robe with wide sleeves. When he lifted his cup to take a sip, the red cord around his wrist slid in and out of sight. I'm so nervous about Yao Wenyu and Chao Tianya. Chao Tianya sat down without fuss on the chair beside Yuan Zhuo. What fine tea is this? Chao Tianya said as he accepted the cup Gao Zhongxiong handed him. He took a sniff before saying, Oh, the height of spring from Hezhou. Don't be misled by his appearance. Kongling pointed at Chao Tianya. He might look like an army ruffian, but he is in fact a tea connoisseur. One must make merry while one can. Oh? Well, wouldn't you know it? The footnote, it happens to be referencing the poem that the title of this book is from. A line from the poem Bring in the Wine, Qiang Jin Jiu, by Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai. Chao Tianya sipped his tea. If I had money, I'd only want to satisfy my appetite for food and drink. I'm happy to spend whatever's necessary for a taste of fine tea and good wine. Eyes lowered, Yao and Yu said, "You should learn from Shenwei." Gao Zhongsheng hurriedly waved his hands. "On the contrary, I envy Commander Xiao. Me, I just want to save up enough to marry a virtuous wife after all this is over." "Song Yue isn't married yet," Kongling asked him. "Are you not anxious about it?" "Just look at that old Fei the 10th. He's not married, is he? None of them is in a hurry, so of course I need to get hitched as soon as possible." Chao Tinya set down the teacup and said with a straight face, "I've been yearning after their wedding gift money so much I can't sleep at night." Everyone around the table burst into laughter. Chao Tinya turned to look at Yao and Yu. "Mr. Yuanzhua isn't married either. Are you anxious?" The flowers on the branch above them fluttered gently down onto Yao and Yu's sleeves. He turned to meet Chao Tinya's gaze. When the breeze flew past, it carried a hint of his slightly bitter medicinal scent to Chao Tinya. "Used to be," Yao and Yu answered. "But it doesn't matter now that I have Hu Nu." Other than Chao Tianya, no one present knew much about Yao and Yu and Commandery Princess Zhao Yue. They had all heard rumors that the Commandery Princess was going to marry him, so they very naturally concluded he was referring to her. Oh, the last time petals fell, someone died. Henry. If you ask me, there are 3 regrets in life. Not being born as Hu Nu is one of them. Chao Tianya reached out to pick up Hu Nu, but used the chance to grasp Yao Wenyu's wrist behind the cat's furry body. "Or I could have rested all day and night on your lap, living out my fantasies." Yao Wenyu's expression went blank with embarrassment. He hadn't expected Chao Tianya to be so bold. Flustered, he began to cough. "Commander Qiao said such surprising things. It'd be wonderful to hear you engage in a philosophical discourse with Yuanzhua." Okay. Alright. Oh my god. On every page, I'm like, what is gonna happen? Gao Zhongsheng sighed. "Who knows if I'll ever have the chance to see Yuanzhua's literary grace on full display again. Idle rhetoric is detrimental to the state." Yao and Yu raised his hand to cover his mouth, and a hint of red peeked out from his sleeve again. "I wasn't finished earlier. Marshal Qi's lack of reply means she's displeased with the idea of He Rigu and her lands. When all's said and done, we weren't the ones who conquered the Qingshu tribe's territory. We can't force the issue." Kongling nodded. "I worry Marshal Qi will hold a grudge against his lordship because of this." "We want to leverage one force to fight another," said Yao and Yu. "But He Rigu is a Biansha Scorpion, after all. It's reasonable for Marshal Qi not to trust him." "That's only part of it." Kongling exchanged a glance with Yao and Yu and slowly shook his head. "The worst case would be if Marshal Qi suspects his lordship is threatening Qidong with his proposal. The Qingshu tribe's lands are close to the Bianjun Commandery," Yao and Yu said. "Even if Marshal Qi doesn't see it as a threat, the generals of Qidong will. They've had enough of being held under duress by the military inspector eunuchs of Chidu. They will never agree to let the Scorpions be the prefectural governor's eyes on them. If Qidong is unwilling," Kongling said, "then all we can do is make other plans." And there's a scene break there. A single candle burned in the military tent. Shi Juyin sat with one leg propped on the other, massaging her neck absently as she listened to Chi Wei's report. "Tell Lu Guangbai to stop sending letters. His 20,000 infantrymen can move at the drop of a hat. He is the only one who can operate without the burden of supplies." It's a good question, Henry. How will they wrap this up in one volume? There's like a lot of loose threads right now. So I'm really wondering. I trust Tong Do Ching, but how? She stared up at the top of the tent. Neither Jiming nor Xiao Qie has brought the matter up again since their first request. General Liu has served under you for a very long time, Qi said. He knows how capable you are. Of course he wants to persuade you to deploy troops. I understand his desire to fight the Biansha horsemen. Qi Juyan frowned slightly. But Great Zhou has never gone so deep into the desert before. It's a long journey with dangers lurking on all sides. Once all three armies march east, who's going to ensure the safety of our home turf? There are still scorpions in Chudu. Qi Wei understood her predicament, which was why he hesitated. If the marshal rejects them now, I fear you may earn the infamy of selling your integrity for a title. No sooner had Chudu conferred on her the rank of Prince of Donglia than she had turned against her allies in Zhongbo and Libei. Meanwhile, her garrison troops still subsisted on Shen Zichuan's grain. Anyone who caught word of this would condemn her. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, does Shen Zichuan kind of know that she's in a position where maybe it looks bad and it might force her hand? Also, yeah, you're right, Henry, there's more of her in this volume than the one she was on the cover of. I feel like it was probably difficult to choose which side characters to put on which covers, because every volume kind of, like, jumps around between all of these different plots. And it's kind of like, you can't really say, like, oh, this is the Yao and Yu Chao Tinya volume, or, like, this is, like, the Qi Juyan Hua Xiangyi volume, and pick one. So it was like, well, we gotta go with something here. That's my guess, anyway. Qi Wei understood her predicament, which was why he hesitated. If the marshal rejects them now, I fear you may earn the infamy of selling your integrity for a title. No sooner had Chudu conferred on her the rank of Prince of Donglia that she had turned— oh wait, sorry, I already read that. As they wish. Qi Juyan's tone was nonchalant. Nothing in the world is harder to control than wagging tongues. It's a tricky road to navigate. In Zhongbo's view, providing grain to feed the garrison troops is an act of mercy, Qi Wei said. But if Li Bei hadn't been tied up in such a dire war up north, leaving Zhongbo exposed and in need of our aid, Shen Zichuan wouldn't have offered us grain so readily. People like him scheme after the whole world. He knows how to grasp an opportunity. Qi Juyan's profile was serious. There was no trace of her usual cheeky smile. In helping Li Bei, I was helping myself. And now, I'm also helping myself by not deploying troops. Qidong and Li Bei are brothers in adversity. But now that the crisis in Li Bei is quelled, Ca'an's desire to push farther into the desert might also be viewed as a proud general exhausting his resources for the sake of conquest. Ever since the empire fractured, refugees abound. The battles this year and last were inevitable. I can see it too. Amor is showing signs of fatigue. It's an excellent time to crush his alliance of 6 tribes. But the 8 cities' granaries are empty, and commoners are dying on the streets. There's drought in Yongcheng. Yet Jiang Qingshan must still find a way to supply grain to Chudu and Qidong in the autumn. Grain that will be taken from the mouths of the people. Of Shen Zichuan's 6 prefectures, 3 only produce enough to feed their populace, so he must also rely on the granaries in Hezhou. Sure, it would feel good to fight Biansha, but I can't go. Since the emergence of the incredible Amor, the 6 tribes of Biansha had become the bane of Zhou's generals. If Li Bei emerged victorious after this deep incursion into the desert, then no matter who sat on the throne in the future, the names of the Li Bei armored cavalry and Xiao Qie would go down in history. As a general, who wouldn't want to test themselves against such an opponent? Qi Juyan snuffed out the candle, plunging the tent into darkness. She sat for a moment, then said, I'll dictate. Write this down. Tell Shen Zichuan that even if the Qingshu tribe's territory goes to waste, I will not permit He Rigu to set a single foot onto it. Next, tell Xiao Jiming that though I've seen him as a bosom friend since childhood, we of the Qi clan are still subjects of the Zhou Empire. Fighting foreign foes together is my duty, but empowering Zhongbo is treason. Finally, tell Lu Guangbai that I wish him great success in his military exploits, and in seeking redress for his previous humiliation. But this time, I will not be traveling alongside my little brother. A lone goose cried at the moon as it sailed across the horizon of the Bianjun commandery. Qi Wei tucked the letters away and turned to leave the tent. Yellow sand rustled under his boots. Many miles away, Lu Guangbai scooped up a handful of the yellow sand at his feet. He stood with his back to the dusky sky, the letter he'd written to Qidong still in his hand. He squatted for a while, then folded the letter and tucked it away. The sand in his palm trickled back to the ground. Grand Marshal Qi, treat this letter as you would me. When I left the commandery without authorization, it was a dereliction of my duty. In this, I have failed the people of Qidong. It is a wrong I cannot rectify except by slaying our enemies on the battlefield. I will always be a general under your command. Although we may not fight this battle together. With the mountains, rivers, and the bright moon as my witness, I swear I will not fail you. Guys, that's the end of the book. What does it mean? Hello? Help? That's the end of the book. We have to wait. Now we have to wait a month to find out what happens. I am so sorry. I'm still chewing on... Yeah, wait. Hold on. First, Blue, you said something. Does this mean Shen Zichuan will have to fight Qi Juyin if he eventually goes for Chudu without Xiao Qia guarding his back? Or is she planning the long game too? Whose side is she on? Right, it's a little bit unclear. Like, is Qi Juyin, like, clearly in the Chudu camp or not? I feel like I don't really have a good idea of that. But also, I guess I'm chewing on, like, in this chapter, the Separate Ways chapter, this sort of, like, Xiao Qia and Shen Zichuan are fighting their own battles on their own thing. Like, they've been, I mean, you know, Xiao Qia has showed up and, like, saved the day. But they have been doing that already, to an extent. So I'm, like, wondering at the significance of that sort of being stated now, and especially of Shen Zichuan having, like, an emotional reaction about it now. Like, I don't know why. I can't wrap my brain around that. Like, Like, what does that mean that this scene happened now? Henry, you said, I'm sure this doesn't mean all the pain will happen in Volume 8. I foresee a lot of pain in Volume 8. Yeah. But I am very glad this did not end on a miserable cliffhanger or Yao and Yu death. Yeah, in QJJ, they haven't, like, set off on their own in a while. Oh, they haven't set off on their own in a while. That's right. They've been together, like, more than normal in this volume, I guess. They won't be together on the campaign again. But yeah, Tang Zhou didn't, like, force a fight between them or something like that. I'm just... I guess I'm trying to understand. I think probably it has to do with, like, well, what are Shen Zichuan's plans for the power he's trying to gain? And then, like, what are Xiao Qia's plans And because Shen Zichuan is always so mysterious, we don't know everything, all the details of what he's planning to do. So, like, he and Xiao Qie, I'm sure, have a certain understanding of what Shen Zichuan is, like, about to do, and that probably has something to do with it, too. Yeah. Yeah, they both always had individual and common goals. I think what got me is that the implication that Shen Zichuan was emotionally hurt or affected by Xiao Qie, like, doing his own thing in this moment, because it's kind of been, like, so far that's been kind of okay. So, I don't know, for some reason my brain is just like, I don't get it. But definitely, yeah, like, there's so much that has to resolve in the last volume. And it's like, how the heck? And meanwhile, I feel like we're gonna get, it suddenly feels like we're gonna get, like, a big reveal about who Feng Chuan actually is, and I'm very curious about that. That actually kind of stood out to me the most, of like, wait a minute, what's this? What is this? What's going on here? Yeah, I'm worried for the secondary characters. So one thing that's interesting is I thought that somebody, Yao and Yu or Chao Tianyao, was going to die in this volume. And I thought it because there is blood on the Guqin strings. But I think that's just a reference to the fact that, like, well, I mean, it's, like, metaphorical, but it's like Chao Tianyao was playing the Guqin and he cut himself on one of the strings and got, like, literal blood on it, which is very ominous in and of itself. But at least that makes the cover a reference to that and not like, hey, somebody's dying. So that was, I think, Blue, you said these covers have been really deceptive. And you're right, that's the way that the cover was deceptive. It was, like, deceptive by being kind of literal. Okay, Henry, you said Shen Zichuan can take care of himself. But Xiaoqi has never been more than a few days' ride away. They rely on each other emotionally, so sudden separation hurts. They don't know how far apart they will be. Oh, Blue, you're saying they do know how far apart they will be, and that's why it hurts. But yeah, no, that makes sense. And we're going into, like, the deep end. And also, I wonder, like, what Shen Zichuan is going to do, because he really should not be fighting on the battlefield himself this time. Like, he really, really should not be. So I hope that he doesn't decide to do it anyway. I have, like, this one theory, but I don't want to say it because I don't want to, like, manifest it. Maybe I'll put it in Discord later if anyone is, like, interested under a spoiler, but I'm like, I don't want it to be true. Yeah. Well, this was a great volume. Like, a lot of stuff happened in this volume, honestly. Like, this last portion of it was kind of chill compared to how most of the volume has been. Oh, and hold on, I'm gonna grab the Beauty's Blade, which is what we're reading next. 1 second. I forget if I've shown everyone the cover, the beautiful cover, the wonderful, amazing cover by the same artist who does the, like, paperback Scum Villain covers. There were actually 2 cover versions for this. Like, one of them was an exclusive with some store, I forget, but I preferred this one, honestly. I'm excited for this. Yeah, and I will admit, I'm not spoiled for basically anything in this, but I have flipped through and looked at the artwork, but it really wasn't, I wasn't really spoiled for anything. I just couldn't, like, stop myself, and also that was before I knew I would be reading it on stream. But I have not read a word of this. Oh yeah, and I mean, of course, yeah. Shen Zichuan doesn't know if Xiaojie is going to survive, and vice versa. Yeah, Valinci, the artist. You prefer that cover too. Yeah, I'm glad also that we got more of that artist outside of Scum Villain. I want to see them like do more covers, honestly. Yeah, the thing about it is I do at one point I like saw like a summary or something. So I know like a couple of things about the characters, but I don't really know anything about the plot, like what their goals are, what their, you know, anything like that. So I'm also pretty in the dark with this book, which is cool. It just feels like sort of a historical book as well, being the first baihe by Seven Seas, and now finally they've licensed like 3 others. Yeah, I'm very excited for it. One thing I noticed... Oh no, never mind. I was going to say they didn't do the normal thing of putting art of some small important item on the spine, but they actually did. It's just in a different place. Anyway, what, Henry, what did... Oh. Yeah, I guess it's like one more thing. I'm nervous. I think I'm the most nervous in book 8 of like, okay, we have to face off against Li Jianting. Like, there's all of these characters on the side, and I'm like, I like them too. I don't want them to be an enemy of Shen Zichuan. But he's kind of in a position where that's going to be the case unless, like, something crazy happens. Which is also totally possible. But it's like, oh, I don't... I'm scared. I'm not looking forward to that part. Because I'm like, I'm rooting for so many of you. So, yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to my stream. Thank you to so many of you for just like being here for the QJJ streams. I can't believe, I mean, we have to wait for the last book to come out, but it's not too long from now that we're going to be finishing the series. And when that happens, it's going to be like my 2nd series that I've ever finished on this channel, and that's crazy. And if she sticks the landing, this will probably be like my favorite Danmei. I'm just sort of waiting to see what happens at the end to decide, obviously. But goodness. Yeah, this volume went by so fast. It just, a lot happened. So yeah, thank y'all for being here. I will see you on Monday with the Beauty's Blade. So have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Bye.